Welcome to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM for Wednesday, December 3rd. I'm Andrew Walworth, and joining me are RCP President and co-founder Tom Bevan and Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon. So, guys, yesterday was this special congressional election in the 7th District of Tennessee. All eyes were on it, and the margin of victory was 9% for Republican Matt Van Epps, who defeated the Democrat Afton Bain. Today, it's kind of a pick-your-own-adventure for the media. Depending on where you sit, it was either a good night for the Democrats because they only lost by 9, or it was a good night for the GOP since they held the seat, and 9 points, after all, is a pretty solid margin. So, Tom, what is the reality here? Who won the night?
Well, I think both sides can claim victory here. Because of the yeah. Well, look. I think Democrats can say, and they have, since Trump was elected in 2024, I think there have been 6 special elections, and the Democrats have overperformed in all of them. That's a good sign for them heading into the 2026 midterms. Now, Republicans, on the other hand, we talked about how close this race was, according to the Emerson poll that came out, and we saw Donald Trump was tweeting about it nonstop, telling people to get out and turn out the vote. And I think this is the kind of race that, if you got caught sleeping, you could have lost. But I think Republican voters were activated to the point where they did recognize and managed to turn out in sufficient numbers to give Matt Van Epps a pretty comfortable victory. 9 points is nothing to sneeze at. Even in a district that Trump won by 22 points in 2024. Again, this is it's the first Tuesday after Thanksgiving holiday. So I think Republicans can say, look, we got the job done here, and not to read too much into what happened yesterday as far as their prospects for 2026.
Yeah. Turnout, Carl, was pretty high. I think it just about matched the last regular election there. So the Republicans did turn out. It sort of answered that one question, whether Republicans would turn out if Trump was not at the top of the ticket. And it seems like they did because, as Tom points out, 9%, in a normal race, that's a pretty healthy margin of victory.
If it was a presidential race, it'd be called a landslide. So, yeah, right. That's right. We had been talking about the Democrats taking advantage of the complete antipathy for the president among the liberal base that forms the backbone of voters in Democratic primaries. And the Republicans had they were getting hurt coming and going. Trump was motivating, galvanizing Democrats to the polls, but since he wasn't on the ballot, the mega base wasn't galvanized. I think they saw that this time and did something about it. Trump weighed in personally on this race. There was a poll by Emerson that showed the race within 2 points, and the White House pulled out all the stops. The local GOP did, and so they managed to do what you said, Andy, which is get enough of their people at the polls to win comfortably.
I think they spent $3 million is what I read, Carl, which, that's probably not spending $3 million in a deep red district is not where you want to be, but they had to do it. And so.
Well, and the other thing is, you guys, it's a neighboring state to Virginia, Tennessee. So I was thinking, so in Virginia, you can say that you want Republican children to die and have their mother watch them and die horribly because you don't like their policies. Which Jay Jones did, and you can be elected attorney general to the top law enforcement, job in the state. But in the neighboring state of Tennessee, if you say that you don't like country music in Nashville, you are cooked.
Well, to that point, Tom, when you look at these results for the Democrats, again, sort of two narratives come out of this. Does it bolster the progressive side of the Democratic Party? Because, she was described as the AOC of Tennessee. Bernie Sanders, David Hogg, Jasmine Crockett all campaigned for her, and she came within 9 points. Or is the lesson that, boy, if they had ran a more moderate Democrat in that district, they might have been able to peel off enough independents to actually win?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could argue that one round or square, I suppose. I still maintain, as I said yesterday, that excuse me, that excuse me, that the progressive wing of the party is ascendant. I mean, I just don't think there's any question that, had they run a more moderate Democrat, obviously would have been a better fit for the district, but wouldn't probably have gotten as many progressives in Nashville as excited as these people were about Afton Bain. And as you mentioned, I mean, they had this parade of celebrities from the progressive wing of the party come down there to endorse her and motivate voters. I'm not sure that she would have gotten, had she been a much more moderate candidate, that she would have gotten as much attention. But who knows? I mean, that goes back to the elections that we just had, where you had, Mamdani winning in New York, but more centrist candidates like Spanberger winning in Virginia. And so I guess both sides of the party could walk away with their theories about why, they had the better theory of the case. So I don't know the answer to that question. It's impossible to know, but I think Democrats overall are happy. It's a moral victory. I mean, even though it's 9 points, and they can still say, look, this was we were never really had a chance at winning this district, and the fact that we were able to cut Trump's margin in half bodes well for 2026.
Yeah, what I saw, Carl, while I was watching some of the coverage, is the number of people saying this must have been a Democratic talking point because it was everywhere, that any Republican in a district that was less than Trump 15 better watch out because this shows they're vulnerable. Do you buy that?
Well, it's a nice talking point, but they don't need to worry about districts like that. If they win in next year's midterms, if they win districts where Trump won by 3 or 4 points, they're going to take back the House. That's the point.
Right.
Right. Well, Afton Bain, Tom, I just want to get your impressions at this point. I mean, pretty interesting candidate, very controversial. Is this the last? I mean, she's on the national stage now. Is this the last we've heard from her, or do you think she'll be back? Because this was a special election. There's another election right around the corner.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was reading through. I mean, she went from literally a nobody to a national figure within a matter of a week or 2 weeks. The intensity of the coverage of this race, of her in particular, because of the publicity, much of which was negative about the stuff that was drudged up and past statements and the like. As I said yesterday, no publicity is bad publicity in the current environment. So where does that lead her? I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's like one of those things.
I think Trump should pardon her. Just
pardon her for what?
Who cares? Just to troll her.
No, but some of these folks, they turn into national figures. Even if they don't win. Stacey Abrams, for example, I mean, her claim to fame is losing the Georgia governor's race twice, became a national figure, and then got, I don't know how many billions of dollars shoveled into her little non-for-profit thing. But sometimes, they don't manage, particularly in states that are red states. You think about the folks who ran against, what was the name of the woman who ran against Mitch McConnell in Kentucky, and they thought she was the next coming, and some of these other folks, and you never hear from them again. So,
but she could.
It'll be tough unless she moves to a blue state, probably, to become a figure in Tennessee. I mean,
well, wait a minute. She can run for city council in Nashville. She can run for a state legislative seat. If she's interested in electoral politics, I think this showing will encourage her and the people who like her to find a seat she can run in and win.
Yeah,
but a city council seat in Nashville is not. I mean, we're talking about you can do you can wreak all kinds of havoc on rising
country
star
music
and
Party. Those pedal boats, and she can.
We're asking whether she's got a shot at the vice presidency. Basically, that's what we're asking here. But
school board,
senator, governor. Maybe she could be mayor of Nashville and run as a socialist and be the Mamdani of Nashville.
There you go.
That's actually
now we're talking.
Now we're talking. So she did run on affordability. That is still the word that we're all talking about these days. Here's Trump yesterday at his televised cabinet meeting on the topic of affordability.
Affordability is a hoax that was started by Democrats who caused the problem of pricing, and they didn't end it. When look, they lost in a landslide. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote. We won everything. You take a look at districts. It was 2,750 to 525, because that was an affordability problem. But when they always say, I watched today where they have a race going on right now in Tennessee, and this woman goes, affordability, affordability.
Tom, is he whistling past the graveyard here?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, he is, that affordability is not a hoax. It is a real issue that he has to grapple with if he wants to help Republicans hold on to the House and the Senate. But he does have a point that Democrats caused a lot of the problems that they are now have basically chucked in his lap and said, oh, we've got an affordability crisis. So that part of it's true, I think, and I think voters understand that. But at the same time, he's been president for almost a year. It is his economy, like it or not, and affordability is an issue for voters, and they do not like the job that he has been doing, particularly on inflation. You look at his approval rating on inflation, and it's like negative 25. I mean, it's down. It's by far his lowest rating. He's down in the mid 30s, and disapproval's over 60. So he's clearly not doing the job when it comes to battling voter perceptions about inflation, the economy, affordability.
But when he calls it a scam or a fraud, Carl, a hoax, that does sort of remind me of the Biden administration, where they kept saying, "Oh no, you don't believe what you see in the grocery stores. Don't believe
it's transitory. It's Putin's fault.
Transitory. It's Putin's fault." Yes, all this sort of stuff, and it didn't work for Biden. So I'm just curious as to why with that lesson so fresh in everyone's mind, Trump would talk this way about it.
Well, I think the root of the problem here, to what you're talking about, is Andy, is why he can't communicate on this issue better. Is, he just has a very limited vocabulary. He seems to, for he's 79 years old, a Native American speaker, and he uses the same 400 or 500 words over and over again. Hoax, and that's not even what he means. So, you guys mentioned, both you and
Carl
Tom,
is always auditioning to be a speechwriter for Donald Trump. Have you noticed that?
Jeez. Well, I'd last one day in that job.
I think you could
what
last
Biden
a Scaramucci.
What Biden's
One Scaramucci, yeah.
One Scaramucci, Carl.
what Biden said was, you remember this. First of all, he denied that inflation was happening. Then he said it was be temporary. Then he blamed Vladimir Putin. Then he blamed corporations for price gouging. Then he said, oh, it's going to pass. Then he blamed the Democrats in the 2022 midterms had one of the stupidest talking points in the history of American politics. They said, in Germany in 1933, people were worried about inflation and they elected Adolf Hitler. It was none of that, simply made up story. And so you're asking me, so why is this guy now imitating the least effective president we've ever had talking about inflation? And I think it's his lack of command of the language. You can imagine him saying, listen, the Democrats have this word, affordability. It must test well in their focus groups. Great, fine for them. But we're talking about inflation. We're talking about the health of the economy. This economy is healthier than when I took over. I inherited a terrible inflation problem from the previous administration. And all the Democrats know this. They don't tell the truth about it. Barack Obama was blaming George Bush for the economy in his 6th year in his presidency. I've been in office for 10 months. I've taken the following steps to bring down prices, and they're going to come down more. And they can, they're too cute by half. And here's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. It's number one in my mind, and here are the steps we're taking. But he has this meandering way of speaking that where he gives a name calling and words that are so imprecise. Affordability is a hoax. What the average American is sitting there saying, well, wait a minute. No, it's the interest rates are still high. Right. Housing prices are high. The cost of groceries has doubled in the last 7 years in this country. It's not a hoax. And if you're calling it a hoax, I'm not going to have much confidence that you're going to be able to fix it.
Yeah. So
Right. Hoax was the wrong way to describe it. It sounds dismissive. It
Right.
sounds like gaslighting. And to Carl's point, I mean, Trump has an argument to make. He should just say, look, I got left with a shit sandwich and I'm working hard every day on your behalf to try and fix it. And it's taking time, but we're doing all the things that we have to do. And, you can't, this problem, Joe Biden, it took 4 years for him and I've been in office 10 months. And so, I'm working as hard and as fast as I can to make the economy great again, like it was in my first term when we had the lowest inflation, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
I mean, he's got a lot of tools in the toolbox. He just, to Carl's point, doesn't use them appropriately.
Well, here's because I went back and was looking at some of the things he had talked about when he talked about inflation and affordability before. This is what he said after his meeting with Mamdani, which was right after the election. He said, we had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. A big thing on cost. The new word is affordability. Another word, it's just groceries. It's sort of an old-fashioned word, but it's very accurate. They are coming down. Now, again, a little bit of a word salad there, but, he was oddly giving Mamdani credit for running on this and said that some of his ideas were in line with what Trump was talking about. I don't know what ideas he was talking about, Carl.
That excerpt you made, I mean, this guy, he makes Kamala Harris look like Lincoln. And he really ought to think before he speaks. Look, we have this radio show. We talk for an hour a day, the three of us. That's probably too much. But the three of us do not start sentences that we don't know where that sentence is going. And the President of the United States shouldn't do that either.
Well, Tom, is there enough time between now and the midterms for the magic to work and for prices to come down and people to say, things look good? Or, as you know, we're less than a year away. Is it going to be an issue?
It used to be that it was about the quarter before the election. So
right.
Let's say June-ish is when people made their analyses of the economy, right, and formed their opinions. And really, at that point, anything that happened was kind of too late if inflation went down or whatever, that the cake was kind of baked at that point. These days, especially with Trump, opinions are so well formed that a lot of people are making up their minds, have already made up their minds who they're going to vote for, months in advance, even years in advance. So, but I do think it can help on the margins. I do think he has a few months to, but again, will his messaging be sufficiently precise and accurate? If he just continues in calling it a hoax, I'm not sure that's going to get the traction that he needs. But if he's able to say, listen, I'm working hard. Here's, my whole administration is focused on this, and here's what we've achieved. Here's what we're doing. If he did something more along those lines, I think he would be able to move the needle and help out some of these Republicans who are in really tough districts that are battling against Democrats who are harping on affordability.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, we're going to have to take a break. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm here with Tom and Carl, who have both been auditioning for jobs as speechwriters at the White House in this segment. Kind of interesting. We'll be back with more right after this. We are joined now by Mary Katharine Ham. She is a columnist at OutKick. Mary Katharine, welcome to the program.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Hammer time.
Yeah, right.
Let's go.
So, Mary Katharine, I want to talk first about Governor Walz of Minnesota. He's in a bit of hot water. Jim Garrity of National Review has a piece in the New York Times with the headline, "Tim Walz is crumbling along with his 2028 hopes."
Yeah.
This is all in the wake of this New York Times story over the weekend that claims that about $1 billion of taxpayer money has been stolen in 3 separate plots that are being investigated by the feds. I also want to talk about the Republicans in a minute, but let's start there. Mary Katharine, how much trouble is Governor Walz in right now?
A fair amount, and he should have been in this trouble, in 2024. Like, at least in the public sphere. It's like the wedding singer where it's like, oh, wow, this could have been brought to my attention last year. Now, if you were paying attention, particularly to Jim Garrity and other people on the ground in Minnesota, you would have known that some of this was brewing and that some of this had already happened and been documented, up to and including, I believe, that incriminating audio of Ellison on tape saying he's gonna try to abet these people. So it's one of these things where it's like, oh, now it can be told in the New York Times. Nonetheless, I do think it would be appropriate if he suffered electoral consequences for this. Is the Republican in that race, Lisa DeMuth, I believe, who's running against him for governor? I hope that this works in her favor. I think at some point, just regardless of the party, aren't you done being bilked? I mean, this is a very serious problem, and it's a very serious problem that becomes more serious because once you've signaled that you will not root out fraud, that you are willing to accept it, that you even are afraid to talk about it or notice it because you might be accused of being racist, which the people who are involved in this fraud have been very frank about. We can use these people's white guilt against them. If that's the situation you're in and that's the situation you're putting taxpayers in, you will get more and more people. You will become a magnet to people who want to use the system for this. And it's really just awful for taxpayers.
Tom?
Well, look, Jim Garrity's piece, he talks about his Walz's hopes for 2028 are crumbling. And I was reading, I'm like, did he really have a chance at 2028 to begin with, the way he acquitted himself in 2024?
You mean there's still a chance, yeah.
So you're saying there's still a chance? I just don't know that he actually had hopes for 2028. I mean, maybe he did.
You're talking about running for president, Tom.
I'm talking about, if that's...
It would have been a first. We never had a president who pronounced himself on national TV during a debate a knucklehead and then went on to win the presidency. So I was kind of rooting for him because I was hoping that record would be broken, but apparently not.
Yeah, I just don't know whether given the way that Kamala Harris, she kind of dinged him a little bit in her book. I mean, he's turned out to be a spectacularly unsuccessful campaigner. And the more we learned about him, I think the worse it got for him.
Yeah. Carl, Joel Kotkin's got this piece in The Spectator. It says it's called "Slouching Towards Gavin Newsom." So as long as we're talking about Democrats in 2028,
you're going to let Carl wax poetic about his favorite Democratic candidate?
Right. Here's Kotkin. He's quoting California Republican National Committeeman Sean Steele. He says about Newsom, besides having great hair, he's really smart. That's the Republican out there about him. And Kotkin goes on to say he's no great statesman, but with his media savvy and good looks, he could well play one on TV. That may be more than enough against either his party's socialists or the remnants of a disintegrating MAGA. What do you make of that?
Well, Joel Kotkin, who I've known for 30 years, Joel also said that based on his record as governor, this is Joel Kotkin's view, Gavin shouldn't even be considered, that his record in California ought to be disqualifying. And so what he's arguing there is that the Democrats don't really have anybody else. But I would take issue with one thing. We were at the convention. You were there, Mary Katharine Ham, in Chicago, the Democrat? Yeah. And this guy walks in a room and people just gravitate towards him. He has this charisma that's more than most politicians. It's almost electric. And Obama was like this, Clinton was like this. And the others don't have it. So it's more than good hair. There's some quality there. It doesn't always survive the snows of New Hampshire or Iowa. It doesn't survive the primary in South Carolina. I'm not saying it's dispositive, but he has something going for him. And until someone else is going to have to make an argument why they're the better general election candidate than Gavin Newsom. And we haven't heard that yet. And as you guys have already ruled out Tim Walz. So we'll just start checking these people off the list.
Okay, Mary Katharine, if you're a betting woman and you're looking at 2028, who would you put your money on right now?
I mean, probably Newsom, which is so depressing. I think both the Walz story and the Newsom story, Walz doesn't have the charisma of Newsom, but both of them bring in this issue of on the ground results from the governance of these Democratic leaders. I mean, the on the ground results in California are very bad in many, many ways, like hugely hurtful to people with a price tag that's like through the roof. And so if people consider that part of it, he should be disqualified. But often in this business, charm is what gets you hired, and then people find out later whether you can do the job. I feel like with Newsom, there's a lot of evidence that he hasn't done the job, that he's not good at the job. He's in fact very bad at the job. And whether his opponents can use that against him effectively is the question, but there's plenty of fodder. But you're right, someone actually has to say, I'm better and this is why. But you also end up with the same dynamic possibly as the last Republican face-off in the primaries, which was good governor Ron DeSantis with good on the ground results versus extremely charming dude, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't say that that's all that President Trump had going for him, but that was part of that face-off where people gravitated toward this person, saw the good governance of this other version, but said, nah, it's not working for me.
Yeah. Hey, Mary Katharine, I did want to ask you, we talked about this race yesterday in Tennessee 7. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this question, which is lesson for the Democrats, that they did pretty well. They came within 9 points with this very left-wing candidate. And thus, boy, we can run anybody. So let's run the left, which is what we really want. Or do they say, gee, 9 points, we might have been able to win that thing if we had run someone more moderate and might have been able to peel off some of these independent voters. What's the lesson nationally from that race, if there is one?
So my gut says the lesson they will take is we should go left. Look how well we performed. I'm not sure that's the right answer. There is a weird element to this too, where a candidate like Afton Bain, or who has obvious liabilities in some ways, nonetheless in a special election, does get people excited to come out in a way that they wouldn't necessarily have been excited if it were not this pretty loopy liberal candidate. Mm-hmm. She also looked the part in a Newsom-y kind of way. I liked that even though she hates country music in Nashville last night for her concession speech, she like broke out the nudie suit. Did you guys see that?
Oh, I saw it.
Like rhinestones everywhere.
And she sang 9 to 5 or something? Like, what the heck?
Too little, too late, my friend. But so I think what might be happening is that some of that energy did matter and made this closer in a special election, but will not work on the regular calendar. Mm-hmm. And I think that, but I think the left is going to do what the left wants to do, which is run left.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, well, I should say, just so people know, we're talking to Mary Katharine Ham. She's here on RealClearPolitics. But we got to talk about the Republicans a little bit. We have this new poll from Rasmussen. Some good news for anyone who's looking for a Trumpian dynasty, I guess. What do the numbers say? And what about the RCP average?
J.D. Vance has a healthy, I think, 43 or 45 point lead in the RealClearPolitics average. Wow. And in second place, tied for second place, is Ron DeSantis at 10%. And drum roll, Don Trump Jr. at 10%. Marco Rubio's at 8.5%. I think Nikki Haley's at like 4.5%, and RFK Jr.'s at 4%, and then they're like 11% undecided. So, and I hadn't thought, everyone's talking, oh, it's going to be Vance Rubio. It's going to be Vance Rubio. And then I thought to myself yesterday, I'm like, well, hold on a second. What? Vance and Don Trump Jr. are really good friends. Mm-hmm. And if you want to kind of keep the Trump magic happening, why doesn't a Vance Trump Jr. ticket make sense? Maybe it does. I mean, maybe that would be,
well, the president's not having it. He said yesterday at a cabinet meeting that there's two people in this room who could be the nominee. He said, it won't be me. And he said, and they'd even be a good ticket. And it wasn't Don Jr. wasn't in the room, Tom.
I
It was
understand.
J.D.
and that
Vance
is
and Marco
look,
Rubio.
I'm saying the conventional wisdom is it's a Vance Rubio.
I'm not giving you
2028
conventional
ticket.
wisdom. I'm giving you what the President of the United States said. He ruled out
Okay.
his own son. So you shouldn't be ruling his son in just based on a
All right.
very
So
too early
Mary
poll.
Katharine, is there any chance that anyone other than JD Vance will be the nominee in 3 years?
I think there's some chance, but I think it's slim. And look, it would just be too perfect for my own personal ideological leanings for this arc to have happened, and at the end we end up with a Marco Rubio as a like I can't count on that form of happiness in politics for me. So I think it's likely to be Vance, and I think Vance in the cabinet meeting sort of demonstrated why that's the case, because you get at the beginning of the cabinet meeting Trump going on this rant and long soliloquy about various grievances, various accomplishments, but it's more grievances if we're being frank, and a little bit of like this whole affordability thing is a con job from the Democrats, which is not exactly the messaging you want to go into 2026 with. He's just annoyed that that attack is working because his policies have not proven to people that he's working on this. But then you get to Vance. And Vance knows that this isn't the argument, so he turns it around and says, like, well, here's the case we're making on what things have gotten cheaper and how we've done that, on unleashing energy, and here's the problems we were given when we started. And it's a much more cohesive vision. And that to me is that pairing, what that pairing is for, because Vance knows how to sew all these things together and pitch it to people. Sometimes he's a little too slick for my taste, but he's very skilled. And if there's something a leader of a MAGA coalition that was bonded by Trump is going to need, it's going to be a person who can intellectually draw together these interests with a cohesive story about why they should stick together. And I think that is what his strength ends up being. You saw it at that meeting.
Yeah. But, just because Tom brought up Junior, those polls are interesting. I mean, and we talk about polls a lot at Real Clear Politics, and we should let our listeners and viewers know that we understand that the polls are often wrong, and I can tell you we're going to get like massive comments in the comments section saying, you guys talked about Afton Bain, and she didn't come close. We had this one poll that put her about 2% within the winning, and a lot, not just us, a lot of people sort of glommed on that, including the Republicans. But what does Junior have a future, Mary Katharine, or is this just wishful thinking on the part of 10% of the people who answered to that poll?
I don't think it's entirely wishful thinking. I mean, when Donald Trump Jr. gave a speech at the 2016 RNC, I thought to myself, oh, he's like sort of like Trump, but he sounds quite a bit more conventional in his delivery. Now that's not what people wanted at that time, but perhaps it is in the future. And I think pretty much all elections at this point feel like vibes elections. And so people are choosing in this poll between the story that makes sense to them. Is the story that makes sense to them that reins get handed to the VP Vance, or is the story that makes sense to them that the reins get handed to the son? Now, I would prefer the Vance version just because it seems more American than handing the reins to the son and making this dynasty, which I think many people had problems with other families in U.S. politics. But I think there's a script there that people are looking at, and they find him compelling when he's on the stage sometimes.
Carl, what about vice presidency? That would seem to be what the polls are saying, right?
Yeah, well, it was just, he's narrowly ahead of Rubio. We were talking about charisma earlier. Don Jr., when he first came on the scene, when his father came on the scene, he reminded me very much of the idiot second brother in The Brothers McMullen. He even had the same hair and same accent. But I like the three of you, I've heard him speak, and he's better spoken than his father. He's just kind of as ticked off as his dad, but he's not an unserious person. I wouldn't say that anymore, and neither is Eric Trump, for that matter. I don't think Trump wants to choose between his two sons. I also think, remember, Trump sort of drove Marjorie Taylor Greene out of the party by showing her a poll that she could not win in Georgia statewide. And this is an interesting development because I think if they're doing polls like this, I think a poll with Vance Rubio is going to poll better in general election than Vance and Trump Jr. And I think Donald Trump has made it, he'd like his legacy continue. He'd like to, like Ronald Reagan did with George H.W. Bush, you get your vice president there, third term, it would be considered the third Trump term, or since Trump thinks he didn't really lose the 2020 election, I guess it'd be the fourth Trump term.
Yeah, it is important that Trump never brings this up, right? He's always Marco and Vance.
Right.
And I think it's interesting that he always mentions Marco in concert with Vance every time he's asked about it.
Yeah, sometimes he seems to put Marco
right.
ahead
He even
of
mentions him first.
so it's interesting. Yeah.
Again, that can't be the ending because I can't imagine.
Mary Katharine, can I ask you, because I know you went to Georgia. Are you a Georgia native too?
I'm not from Georgia originally. My family is. My dad's side of the family is.
Okay, but you're a Bulldog.
I went to UGA. Yeah.
So, and we'll get to Lane Kiffin in a minute because I know you're a college sports nut too. But this whole Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, what do you make of that and of her decision, and the fact that she claims that she was so hardcore MAGA that she was not just America first, but America only, and that this was going to somehow be perhaps the future for her, a future lane for her to be in that would, I don't know, could potentially, do the horseshoe thing with the populist right and the populist left.
Right.
Is there a future for her doing that? Do you think she would have won if she had run for Senate in Georgia?
I don't know if she would have won running for Senate, but I'm kind of surprised she bowed out entirely so quickly. I thought there was some potential in the district that she was running in. It was it was less rural and more urban. It was moderating a bit. If you're trying to accomplish the horseshoe, going on The View and being treated nicely feels good. You get a lot of attention. She was getting
apologizing on CNN,
right?
Helps.
A ton of media hits, right? Like you could ride that for a while and see if you could pitch people on it in your district. Turns out Trump still got the juice, and she was not interested in that. I think she probably wants a less annoying job and can get paid to do something else and is on to do that, would be my guess. But maybe she's preparing for 2028. I was surprised that she just bowed out. It happened so quickly.
It did.
And I was like, oh, America only, except like, pause. This is getting annoying for me.
Yeah, right. All right, well, guys, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Real Clear Politics. We're talking to Mary Katharine Ham. I've got Carl and Tom with me, and we'll be back in a moment. But before we go, I want you to listen to this. We're all looking for a way to make more money, but let's be honest, the idea of learning something new, taking on more risk, or working harder, nobody wants that these days. That's where TrueTrade comes in. Their AI-driven technology enables you to generate income passively without risking your own capital, wasting your time, or needing years of experience. TrueTrade has created institutional-grade software, the same type hedge funds and big banks use, but now it's available to everyday people like you and me. And here's the best part. They'll even guarantee your trading capital. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can trade with. And I don't know about you, but that kind of funding could be life-changing. So if you're looking for a smarter way to make money, download their mobile app on Android or iOS, or go to TrueTrade.io right now. That's TrueTrade.io. Funding accounts are limited, so don't wait. Reserve your funding today and let technology earn for you. See terms to learn more. We've prevailed upon Mary Katharine Ham to stick around because I wanted to talk to you about this thing in particular. This is this new book. It's by Scott Galloway. He's addressing the masculinity crisis. The book is called Notes on Being a Man. He's been described as a progressive Jordan Peterson or Gordon Gekko with a social conscience. Mary Katharine, what do you make of the book, and what do you make of the state of masculinity in America? Do we need advice?
Well,
of Scott Galloway?
Yes, I hate to womansplain, but Look, I'm glad that there are voices on this, both Jordan Peterson and Scott Galloway. I have seen him speak about this, and he's fairly reasonable, and he gets some pushback from liberals because he dares to say that masculinity is not in and of itself toxic. So I think that is positive, and perhaps coming from that messenger, more people can hear that message. There's a lot of talk about losing the scripts for how you make a marriage work, how you make relationships work, how you become a man. And I think there's some truth to that. And so having people speak to it in the public sphere who are responsible about it, I think is important. Electorally, it's interesting because the left has spent 20 years saying that masculinity is toxic. Men heard them. It's not it's not rocket science why they turned away. There was one of my favorite anecdotes from the 2024 election was Chris Jansing with MSNBC talking to a Latino prison guard outside of the voting place or his polling place, and he said he voted for Trump because Democrats make me feel bad about who I am. And there's an interesting stat that the way that men view themselves on a scale of masculinity is more correlated with their party identification than femininity is for women. It doesn't really predict anything for women. But for men, there's this big disparity where Republicans at 53% view themselves as very masculine, whereas it's 33% for Democratic men. This is an AEI study on sexuality. It's very interesting. It's cited in the New York Times, all sorts of places. So I'm not fake newsing you guys. But you know what's very interesting is guess what the other two demographics that view themselves as very masculine at 53% are? The exact same percentage. Black men and Hispanic men. So it occurred to me when I heard about that Latino prison guard, I thought, I bet that guy sees himself as very masculine. And a man who sees himself as very masculine is going to look at the current Democratic Party and be like, they hate me. And that's a reasonable conclusion.
Tom, I guess that's a reasonable conclusion.
Yeah.
Do Democrats really hate men, or do they just want better men?
Look, I think Mary Katharine is exactly right. The Democratic Party has spent the better part of 10 years, 20 years talking about how masculinity is toxic and real men and they've been they recognized they had a problem in 2024. And so they tried to correct it. But even as they tried to correct it, you could see how out of touch they were. Remember white dudes for Harris. And
I just remember Tim Walz. That's what I remember.
All these guys these masculine looking guys who were saying I like to cry, or, I do this and I look out for women or whatever. And I mean, it was all, they absolutely did not know what they were doing. And so they're trying to, I think, recalibrate their message to men, young men in particular, because they did lose ground with them. But I don't know that they have the right answers. I mean, you look at and we've talked about these people on our show before. Who are the most popular when you look around on the internet? Everyone's like, oh, we don't have a Joe Rogan and we don't have, all this. And who's the most popular? It's Jennifer Welsh and that other blonde woman, these like liberal harpies that just are, castigating JD Vance every chance they get, calling, they're just, that's not the answer to winning back men is to have those people be the have the loudest voices inside the liberal media ecosphere. It's just not going to work.
Well, I would be remiss also if I did not mention that we have a mirror problem with Republicans, whereas if you talk only about young women as if they are overeducated, naggy, childless cat ladies, like they will think you don't want anything to do with them also. Like,
yeah,
right.
That's a good point. Point. Carl, you're a fairly involved man. I think of you as being
Carl's a masculine man,
but very masculine. What do you make of this Galloway book?
I've seen him interviewed on television. And I thought, is it too cheeky to raise this issue? So what's a manly quality, to stay and fight for your country? Well, he moved to England. He doesn't even live here anymore, like 3 years ago. And I thought, okay, that's one thing. And then the other thing, I hear him taking credit for these ideas, and the Guardian wrote a piece about him and credited Richard Reeves was right. Richard Reeves, that great journalist, had a book out a couple of years ago, and Jonathan Haidt. But the first person I know who raised this issue was Kathleen Parker, who wrote columns about it in the early, and then wrote a book called Save the Males in 2008. This is a problem that's gone on in American culture for a long time. It has a political dimension, but it's not only politics. I remember when I got to Washington, the American Association of University Women would have an annual press conference, and they would give their their data. And women don't talk in class, they don't go into the sciences, they don't do this. And one year I went and I'm looking at the material they're giving us, and I think, wait a minute, are there more women now in law school than men? Are there more women in universities than men? And what had happened was all these disparities had gone away, and women were ascendant, and nobody wanted to take credit for it. The liberals should have been happy. They weren't happy. They were, women still are afraid to speak in class. And I thought, well, that seems unlikely if your class is 2/3 women. But then the problem became disparaging men and disparaging boys and American boys, and making them feel like they not welcome in, not nurturing them, not sort of disparaging them so they wouldn't go to college. And I thought, okay, this is a problem. And the electoral thing, the political dimension followed it. The original crisis was the crisis of American males stop achieving and stop wanting to achieve. And I think, so my point is this has gone on for a long time. And so this new book, to me, it's a little, I don't want to disparage him. He's trying, he's trying, but
all right,
there's a bigger story here.
Listen, speaking of real men, we've only got a couple minutes left, and I did want to get Mary Katharine Ham's take on Lane Kiffin, because I know she's a huge SEC football fan. So, Mary Katharine, I mean, I think I saw you tweet out the other day. So it turns out he is a hoe.
I mean, seriously, look, he famously confronted this podcaster who used a ludicrous lyric on him, said you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. We all hoped that the Ole Miss moment was the moment when this messy man finally figured out how to make it work at a program. But every place he goes, he does this. It is like self-sabotage in the extreme. He's cavorting with his hot yoga lady. Possibly with co-eds here and there. And I just think, I do think college football in the NIL era, he's a great, emblem of what that looks like. He's all out for himself. He's leaving to go to this next team, whatever the big number is, he'll take it. But these students, these athletes, these young men actually need coaches who are focused not just on themselves, who can be adults, who are interested in building a program and sticking around with an 11-1 team when they could go for the national championship. What else do you want, sir?
He wants to go to LSU and then get fired and just get the payout like everybody else is getting. Apparently, they are on the hook for like $70 million for their past. They're still paying Ed
the
Ogeron.
GDP of a small country.
Well, Tom, Ed Ogeron, his last payment, $450,000, comes in a week or two.
Okay,
but right now, they're going to be paying 3 coaches millions of dollars. State University. By the way, there's an easy fix to this, you guys. The NCAA could pass a rule: no football coach could be paid more than the highest paid professor at that school.
Yeah. Oh,
well, all right.
I don't think that's going to happen. But
Nike will save the day if we do that.
Yeah, maybe less than the governor. Maybe that would be it.
There we go.
Anyway, we're going to have to leave it there. Mary Katharine, thank you so much for being with us. It was great having you here. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm with Tom and Carl, and that's our program for today. So if you're listening on the podcast apps or watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, send us a comment. I do read them. It's great to hear from you. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. Stick around. Megyn Kelly is coming up right after this. Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.